Let me ask you something that's going to sound weird. What if I told you that every wealthy person I've worked with in the last 15 years has cried in my office at least once? Not because they lost money, but because they realized they were rich in all the wrong ways. And here's the other side. What if I told you that every happy-go-lucky person I've known who rejected money entirely, eventually they cried too? Different tears, same regret. See, we've been asking the wrong question for our entire lives. It's not, should I chase wealth or should I chase happiness? That's a trap, a false choice. Like asking, should I breathe in or breathe out? I'm 63 now. I've spent 2 decades working with elderly patients in palliative care. I've sat with over 400 people in their final months, and I've heard the same confession over and over. I thought I had to choose. But the people who figured it out, the ones who got wealthy and stayed happy, they weren't lucky. They just understood something the rest of us missed. I'll never forget Margaret. She was 87, tiny woman, sharp as a tack. She owned 3 apartment buildings downtown, worth about $4 million. And she was miserable, just hollow. She told me, I spent 40 years building wealth. I have money I'll never spend, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've laughed in the last decade. Then there was Robert, same unit, different room, 82 years old, music teacher. His pension barely covered his expenses, but this man, he'd light up the room. He'd tell stories about his students, concerts, road trips. But late at night, he told me with tears in his eyes, I should have saved more. My daughter is sacrificing to pay for my care because I didn't think ahead. You see where I'm going? Margaret chose wealth and lost happiness. Robert chose happiness and lost security. And both, in their final chapters, felt the crushing weight of that choice. But down the hall from both of them was Dorothy, 91 years old, retired architect, net worth around $2.3 million. But when I asked her about her life, she didn't talk about the money. She talked about her granddaughter's wedding. She talked about the pottery class she took at 68. She talked about Sunday breakfast with her husband. Then she'd casually mention, oh, and we were smart with money. It gave us options, you know, freedom to say yes to the things that mattered. Dorothy wasn't special. She just understood the secret. Money is a tool for happiness. Happiness is fuel for building wealth. And listen, if you're still here, if this is hitting different than the usual get-rich advice you've been hearing, do me a favor and hit that like button. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it genuinely helps me reach people who are tired of choosing between a full bank account and a full life. All right, let's keep going. Now, I have to be honest with you. I got this wrong for years. In my early 30s, I was obsessed with hitting a number. I worked 70-hour weeks thinking, once I have enough, then I can relax. Then I can be happy. I remember sitting in my car one evening after a 14-hour shift, looking at my bank balance. It was the highest it had ever been, and I felt empty. I was just a stressed-out guy with a bigger bank account. That is the scarcity trap. It tells you joy comes later. But the money doesn't matter crowd is in a trap too. Ignoring money doesn't make you noble. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you a burden on the people you love when you get old. So how do you actually do this? How do you build the and life? I started taking notes on the Dorothys of the world, the ones who had both. They didn't have complex strategies. They just did 4 things differently than everyone else. First, they spent on memories, not status. Dorothy told me she and her husband had a rule. Spend freely on experiences with people you love. Cut ruthlessly on everything else. They drove used Hondas. They lived in a modest house. But they never said no to a family camping trip. They realized that a luxury car gives you a rush for a month, but a family trip gives you a memory for 40 years. They cut the stuff so they could fund the life. Second, they automated the boring stuff. Remember Robert, the music teacher? His biggest regret was not setting up auto savings. He told me, I always thought I'd save next month. The happy, wealthy patients, they never saw the money. It went straight from their paycheck to their investment accounts. They didn't need willpower because they had a system. If you want to enjoy your life, automate your wealth so you can stop thinking about it. Third, they treated health like an asset class. This is the big one. Margaret, the wealthy, miserable woman, told me, I worked so hard I stopped exercising. I didn't sleep. Now I have the money to travel, but I can't walk through the airport. Dorothy walked 3 miles a day until she was 89. She viewed that walk as a financial investment because wealth without health isn't wealth. It's just expensive suffering. Fourth, they defined enough. Margaret never knew what enough looked like, so she kept running until she ran out of time. Dorothy ran the numbers. She knew exactly how much she needed to be free. And once she hit that number, she shifted gears. She stopped chasing. She started living. If you don't define the finish line, you will run until you collapse. Here is the truth after 20 years of bedside conversations. Nobody, and I mean nobody, regrets the experiences they had. Nobody regrets the time spent with people they loved. And nobody regrets saving for a rainy day. The only regret is believing you had to sacrifice one for the other. You don't. Dorothy didn't. You don't have to either. You just have to stop playing the either-or game. If this resonated with you, if you're ready to stop choosing and start living, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more of these conversations, the kind that help you build a life you won't regret at 90. Because wealth without happiness is empty. Happiness without wealth is fragile. But both together, that's a life worth living.